Thank you guys for joining us. We have a great show for you today. I have with me in studio a great friend of mine, a personal coach, a personal trainer. His name is Kelbert McFarland. He is with Finetuned Living, and I'm excited about what we're going to be covering. The topic that we're going to be covering is overcoming the sugar trap, overcoming the phenomenon that happens to all. It happens to me a whole lot less than it did before, but nonetheless, it happens to all of us. And we know what it looks like. It's a 2 o'clock reality. It's a afternoon reality in which sugar rushes in and we hit a sugar crash. And then we have to do something to recover from that. So look, I don't want to dive into the whole thing right now. This is what John is going to talk to us about, and primarily how he has been helping me and how a lot of the things that he has helped me do in many areas of life, my stress, my weight, my energy, my ability to just feel extremely confident about myself. It's had a great impact on how I dress, on how I look, on how I feel. Others can notice just surrounding this whole issue of sugar, this whole issue of how we're eating, how we're sleeping, how we're dealing with stress. The key that he brings to it is this concept of fine-tuned living, making fine-tuned adjustments. And so it resonates a lot with what I do in business. So, but first, let's dive into a little bit of how this whole concept of fine-tuning is so critical in the workplace and how I use it to help clients. What I normally tell clients is fine-tuning is a important concept whenever you're making changes, big impacting changes in your company. Last week, I was talking with a director of a very large nonprofit, and his concern was, I don't know that we can make all these changes. And I said, I would agree with you. You don't need to make all these changes. What you and I are talking about is a long-term plan of sustainability, of scalability, to be able to align your teams and be more productive. And so he said, yes, we need to do all this. But of course, the $64,000 question is how? And so I explained to him, well, we do it one step at a time. We certainly do an initial day or an initial event where we lay out the game plan, we lay out the concepts, we gather everyone's feedback. It's kind of like a retreat. We bring a lot of camaraderie and a lot of energy into it, but then we take it in small bites, one small bite at a time. We make fine-tuned adjustments, very similar like the game of domino. You know, you line things up and then you just press the first domino and it's a lot of fun, okay? You do a lot of little things correctly, and then it eventually just works very well together. By taking a fine-tuning approach, it's easier for people to capture what it is you're trying to get them to change. You take very large bites, no pun intended, is not as successful. I'll give you a couple of examples. It's the idea of communicating between teams, okay? If you're a large company and your marketing department has to talk a lot with your sales department, and then your marketing department has to talk a lot with your distribution team, well, what you do is you set up those meetings back to back so that on Monday, when you're having your meetings with your marketing team, you don't wait till Thursday to then meet with your production team who needs to hear about things, because between Monday and Thursday, there's going to be a lot of miscommunication that happens. So if you align and you make a small adjustment regarding your schedule, it's a whole lot easier to keep lines of communication going. Another example is I was at a client's and they were having a real big issue with problems are not being resolved easily from the front lines. The change that you need to make is really, let's look at how you're handling your new business section in your meetings. And he said, well, yeah, whenever we get the new business, we all kind of look at our watch and it's time to finish the meeting because we never got to it. I said, well, here's the change we're going to make. All right. That's where you place all your items that you need to talk about, all the items that you are all dealing with in your emails, the very things that keep you from wanting to be at a meeting because you have so many things to handle. Those are the things you bring in and you put them in new business. And in new business, you discuss them, you address them, and you fix problems, and you give that area of the meeting a little more time instead of just making that the reason why we all just exit the room because we don't have anything to talk about. What we do instead is we make an adjustment. We take a look at the new business section of the meeting and we said, all right, guys, I have 2 things I want to talk about. I put them in here. I've been noticing that we've been discussing this issue over email. I want us to discuss this here. And you discuss it there. You actually open up your meeting a little more and you make a very good adjustment to you don't radically change the meetings. You don't radically change the adjustment. You just make good changes like putting things in new business and giving it room for the discussion to be had there. And then you give everybody an instruction. I said, guys, you can now go delete all those emails where we were having a discussion outside of here, and we make this meeting much more effective. Okay. So the idea is not to try to do everything at once. You want to make some initial changes and you reinforce them over a long period of time. I met with a team just yesterday, and they do want to do our program. It's a 3.5 day, 4-day training, but I encourage them, let's not do it back to back. Okay, unless you urgently need for it to be back to back, what you want to do is we want to do a half day or perhaps a full day retreat. And then the rest of the sessions, what we want to do them is do them a little bit at a time for an hour and a half every week or 2 hours every 2 weeks, so that in between the lessons, your team can practice. And then you can come back into the workshop, into the classroom. We can roll up our sleeves and ask, all right, what happened? How did that go? Let's look at the next module. And you take it a little bit, a bite at a time. So that's usually in the industry called reinforced training. So the whole concept of having a classroom training, an initial event is really good, kind of just to give everybody a vision of what the game plan is. But then you take it in a reinforcement value, and it's a whole lot easier to pace ourselves, to not run out of steam, to have a long-term plan with short-term accomplishments, and it's a whole lot easier to make improvements. But therein lies really where I hit a brick wall. Okay, I was running out of steam. A lot of work, working many hours. I was drudging. I was dealing with overweight. I was dealing with a lack of energy. I was dealing with an incredible amount of stress. And in 2015, 2016, I ended up in the hospital. My blood pressure was beyond control. I couldn't get ahead of it. The doctor had a very serious conversation with me, how much I dodged a bullet of not having a stroke. And then he asked me the tough question. He said, Maurice, what is so important that you don't want to see your 10-year-old graduate from high school? And that really hit me. That was a really tough moment. I was in the bed because we were in the hospital, and out of the different tests that they had put me under, I woke up and he was sitting on the feet of my bed. He and I are personal friends, and he had a very frank conversation with me. My wife was there, and he asked us, he says, I know your husband works a lot, but I just need to ask your husband, what is it? And he really wanted an answer. It wasn't a rhetorical question. And I guess I'm trying to do too much. I'm trying to do too ambitious. And he said, look, I'm not your therapist. I'm not your primary doctor, but I encourage you to please go to your primary doctor and have tough conversations with you, okay, about your diet, about how you're probably not taking your medicines correctly. And you really need to get a hold of this, Maurice, because it's really gonna hit you. And I did. I paid a lot of attention to it. And over the next 2-3 years, I really tried, but I couldn't get out of certain holes. It was 3 years in which I just find myself kind of like when you're stuck in a ditch and you try to get the car out of it, and all you're doing is pressing the gas, and you're by yourself. You can't push the thing out of it. It was really frustrating. And in 2022, last year, the doctor gave me some really tough news. He says, Maurice, you're within points of becoming diabetic. You're pre-diabetic, and I need you to pay attention to this. I really do. He had been helping me. He'd been giving me instructions, and he'd been monitoring me and helping me out. And now I was doing a lot, but I just could not get a handle of things. I could not get out of this. The name of a nutritionist, I called some folks around, and in my conversations with Kelbert, he and I go to church together. I need help. And so John, I call him John, Kelbert she's very good at just helping me make some fine-tune adjustments. And as he kept telling me about how to do this, I realized, well, that's what I tell my clients all the time. One step at a time, a little bit here, a little bit there, but just you have to line it up correctly. And that's what I didn't know that I was doing. I wasn't lining things up correctly. And so, hey, Kelbert, you're still here, right? In the studio. Come on in and let me introduce everybody. Everybody, this is Kelbert McFarland. How are you, my man?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well. Well. So I know
you drink your water this morning?
I did drink my water this morning. I did. And see, that's one of those little things. I'm about to go get my coffee. I turn my coffee on. I go, nope. The rule is this. Got to go have at least 1, possibly 2 glasses of water before I have my first coffee, And so I used to say, always be closing. You can't have your first cup of coffee until you close your first deal, right? So John kind of turned that on me and says, you can't have your first cup of coffee until you have your first cup of water, for a glass of water. And then, so just little things like that, just real helpful. So yes, John, I've had my water.
Very good.
So,
Very good.
so hey, look, I know that's kind of crazy. You heard all that. How crazy was I, or how far am I, or just your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think just like the businesses that you go to, you probably kind of see similar behavior patterns in most of the businesses. I see that with a lot of people that I come in contact with their fitness and their nutrition and their health, just similar patterns. A lot of people kind of do the same thing and they get caught up with life, but don't realize they have to take care of their bodies to continue to do life.
Right.
And I actually forgot that you had that scare in 2015. It's funny that you did, because 2015 is what kind of triggered a lot of things in my life and caused me to eventually move back to Baton Rouge, because that's when my father passed from just having a massive heart attack. So I moved here in 2016 to take care of my mother. And then that began the journey. That's when I met you guys a little bit afterwards. And that began the journey to really realizing people need just a little fine tuning with their fitness and their health and their nutrition. So,
and so in the subtitle of what you and I selected for this podcast was how to stop relying on one meal to fuel you for the day. And I would say, I don't want to jump ahead, but that's definitely one of the first traps, right? What I find myself, and I find a lot of executives doing, a lot of people in the workplace, is we're trying to get ahead of diet. We're trying to get ahead of not eating so much. So we don't eat throughout the day. We skip lunch. And then we have one meal, which ends up being a very large meal at nighttime. And that it really works against us, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. A lot.
Tell us why. Tell us why.
I mean, I think when you came to me and you told me that you were having one meal a day, and it was like an epiphany. I mean, an epiphany more for you, but I was like, oh, okay, now I got it. Most people don't realize that the body just is a beautiful machine. It's fine tuned. And by the way, I'm just a coach, and these are things that I've just learned from experience.
All right, so I guess, do we have to make the disclaimer? Nothing you hear here is medical advice, right?
Right.
Nothing you hear here is we're telling you how to do things. Well, first of all, tell us about yourself. So you can give us a little bit of, where you come from and where you picked all this up, how you help clients in your business. Okay. Tell us about that.
I live here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I have been in kind of the health space for about 11 years now. I started off with a friend of mine in Tulsa who's a personal trainer. His name is Nizam. He invited me to come work out with him one day, and I worked out in his one-car garage at his apartment and went home and sat on my bed and cried right after the session. And I'm a thin guy. I've always been a thin guy. I'm a thin, somewhat muscular guy now, but back then I was just thin.
You were just a thin guy, right? Okay.
Just very thin, very weak, 150 pounds, 6'2". So, that's pretty skinny. So I just didn't realize how weak I was and how poor conditioning I was in. I mean, you look at skinny people and you think they're in good shape, but that's not necessarily what's going on the inside. I was immediately addicted to working out with him. What we got into was more CrossFit. So it's a lot of functional movement, a lot of high intensity, some weightlifting, and just varied things throughout the day, varied things. And
so you're a CrossFit trainer. You're a CrossFit trainer.
Yes. And eventually he started a CrossFit gym, and I helped him there in Oklahoma start a CrossFit gym. Saw a lot of people's lives transformed. People lose weight. Some people, their weight stay the same, but their bodies change because they gain muscle, lose fat. Muscle's a little heavier than fat. So the scale isn't the thing that we look at all the time. It's just the performance of your body and how you navigate yourself throughout the day. And things have changed for you with that. I know, and we'll talk about that in a second. So then I moved to Baton Rouge to take care of my mother and my grandmother and my aunt. Immediately, the first thing I did was connect it with a CrossFit gym, because fitness is life, and fitness became my life. And then where Finetuned Living comes into play is I had a couple of roommates that would always joke with me, and you see this radio up here. I've always have an old radio somewhere in eye view for me, because I love antiques. And they found out from living with me that they said, it's like you fine tune. You just take the dial and you're just constantly moving the dial on things in your life. And you're just trying to figure out exactly what you like. And you want it exactly perfect. And it's not that I even want it perfect. It's just what I like for that moment. I like cardigans. I like old radios.
The way that you told me about this was you got to find your dial. You got to find those things that you like and just make that small adjustment. And that for me was very game changing, because I tried to do so much all at once that not having step by step an understood approach, it really connected with me, the whole idea of just making fine-tuned adjustments in different areas.
Yeah, it really can apply to so many areas of life. It applies to your fitness. It applies to how you sleep at night. It applies to just going throughout your day. People do that a lot with cars. They make fine-tuned adjustments. You know, they want this, not that. You know, it applies to so much in life, and we just don't realize how often we're just tweaking the dial tweaking the dial.
Let's go ahead and pivot over to how you help me, all right, and the areas in which you help clients. And I'm just saying randomly, probably in order, I'm not sure, but certainly the whole idea of rest, the whole idea of sleep, then the whole idea of stress, eating, and dressing. And they're all very connected. As a matter of fact, when you and I first talked, although we talked about all those areas, you helped me first starting with the idea of dressing. And that was a really great, but I don't want to dive into that because I want us to talk mostly about is the eating and the health aspect. But yes, through this whole program that John brings, he brings a really great holistic approach. My wardrobe changed, my closet changed, the way that we changed our bedroom to make it much more a place of rest, a place of just good rest. That was revolutionary for me. But then the issue of food and the issue of health was just, no pun intended, it was eating me up, right? So let's start with how you help me and how you normally help clients. I know it starts with a mindset, right?
Yeah, it does start with a mindset. I think you came to me at the end of a service and we talked a little bit about how your relationship towards food and how you thought about food. And food always brought up good feelings for you. It brought up family. It brought up
festive is the word I use. Food,
what was it?
Food is festive. It's a feast. It's a celebration. It's life. It's what you commune with folks, and it's just and it tends to be a lot of it, and it's usually very pleasant, very pleasurable. Yes, that's what I told you my relationship with food was.
Yeah, and that's important for me to know because I need to know what do you see when you see a plate of food? And immediately you see eat and eat some more and have a party while doing it. And so
and then the whole idea of y'all get up and get some more. Come on, there's more. And if you don't, then it becomes you're offending people, And so there's these recordings. But hey, look, I'm not pointing fingers one way or the other. I'm the one that got up and got that second serving. So early on you learn that, man, there's more. Hey, don't make it go to waste. And so I said, well, great, I love it. And so I trained myself of having that extra serving. And topping it off late at night with some, good desserts, milk or coffee, and then end up with a good bowl of ice cream.
Yeah.
And of course, throughout the day, there's the Coke element. We'll get that in just a second. But that was my relationship with food. My relationship with food was just a feast, something to celebrate, something extremely important, fun, and enjoyable.
Yeah. So we attacked that first, and we tried to change the way you think about food from fun to fuel. And I want to help you to understand that food is fuel.
Right. The whole idea of fuel was no, I don't want to, I guess I think I know what's coming. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to have to eat stuff that just don't have much taste to it. And I refuse to do that.
But I think you quickly found out it wasn't just eating. Everything wasn't tasteless.
No. Right.
It was just eating the proper things at the right time to fuel your body for optimal performance.
Right. It hit me because you gave me an understanding that no, you don't just give up everything that has taste. You just learn to balance it and just don't eat certain things at certain times. Certainly do your portions, but you certainly have to eat some things that just aren't as tasty, but they're not tasteless. Within 2 weeks, you helped me adjust my patterns of eating. And within 2 weeks, I just noticed a drastic change, both good and bad. I had some sugar withdrawals. Let's dive that a little bit more into the food as fuel.
So what we did was we get you to eat breakfast, number one, to fuel you for the first part of the day. A lot of people skip out on breakfast, and that's just not smart. I mean, your body, again, is a machine. So it's like skipping out on some gasoline, going all the way to E, and then maybe putting a little bit more gasoline in to go all the way to the evening, and then trying to fill up and going to sleep, where your body is supposed to be healing itself. Now it has to process everything. And it's thinking, I don't know when I'm going to get another meal. So it's going to hold on to whatever it gets in that evening meal.
That right there, that to me was probably the first big factor, that understanding. You helped me understand, Maurice, if you don't eat throughout the day, then what happens when you're eating that meal late at night, your body has been thinking you're starving. It's going to retain all that. And yeah, you might want to go jog a mile, but that's not going to do anything. Your body's still fighting you, right? John, I either didn't pay attention in school, or I didn't pay attention to the many workshops I attended. I never caught that. And when I share it with a lot of friends, they go, what are you? I said, yeah, that last meal, you didn't eat lunch. Your body is keeping all that food, and it's going to fight against any exercise you're doing. And so I find that a lot of people that I'm telling this to, they're also going, I never heard that before. And I'm like, well, I didn't either.
Yeah. And now there is something to eating coming out of a fasted state. A lot of people are doing the diets where, yeah. That's not what you were doing.
No, that's not
what you're doing. It wasn't scheduled, and your meals weren't designed. When you weren't fasting, your meals weren't designed to fuel the body. Your meals were designed to fuel the palate, just for the palate to enjoy whatever you were eating. So we tweaked that a lot and incorporated a little bit more water into your diet, into your life. And then I hope we helped you to understand that sugar is your enemy.
I knew it was. I just didn't realize how much everything has sugar, and how carbs are a significant part of that. But first of all, understanding which ones are the carbs, which ones are the starches. You actually sat down with me and you wrote down a very simple description of here's what starches are, here's what fruits are good for you, here's what things you need to lessen, here's what you should mix. And you did that after I went to the doctor, got my blood test, shared with you the notes that he told me. I showed you the instructions that he told me what to lessen and what numbers I needed to increase and decrease. That's when you sat down with me and you kind of educated me a little bit about this whole issue of sugar and how I needed to make adjustments in certain areas. So dive into a little bit into that.
So with that, we went into the kitchen, we went into the pantry, and I showed you how so many things on the labels of what we eat either have high fructose corn syrup, or they have ingredients that you cannot pronounce. And so I wanted to tweak all of that to take high fructose corn syrup, which is kind of a man-made syrup that's much cheaper to process than just sugar, but it's equally not as good for you as sugar. Wanted to take that out of the pantry and try to start incorporating ingredients or things to eat where they were whole foods. Things that you knew what you were eating, what you're putting into your body, things that you can pronounce on the label, things like that. I think you have a phrase that CrossFit came up with, the owner and founder of CrossFit. The founder of CrossFit came up with this: eat meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar.
Eat meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar. At the bottom, it has a paragraph that's very helpful. It's called The Fitness in 100 Words. Let me read it to y'all, okay? Eat meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar. Keep intake to levels that will support exercise but not body fat. Practice and train major lifts, deadlifts, cleans, squats, presses, C&Js, and snatch. And so I haven't got to those yet, John. Still in the first sentence. All right, then it says, similarly, master the basics of gymnastic, pull-ups, dips, rope climb, push-ups, sit-ups, presses, the handstand, pirouettes, flips, splits, and holds. Right now, you and I focus me on just walking. Okay, so I'll tackle those later, but right now, my big first step is just to get up and move. That's been very helpful because you said, look, you're either going to have to do all this, eventually you might get to, but if you don't start moving, you're never going to get to this. You've got to move. So again, we'll dive that in just a minute. All right, then it says bike, run, swim, row, etc., hard and fast. 5 or 6 days per week. Mix these elements in as many combinations and patterns as creativity will allow. Routine is the enemy. keep workouts short and intense, regularly learn and play new sports. This flyer, I made 5 copies. The picture you guys are seeing right now, that's sitting up against one of my laptops in my office. So I have it here in my office, and I regularly see it to remind me. This is the game plan. Then I had one in my bedroom, one in my mirror in my bathroom as I'm getting dressed. I'm looking at it, one on the refrigerator. Okay. And then one that I kept in the car. All right. And the reason I did that is because it was so easy to just remind me how simple it has to be. Eat meat and vegetables. That's not bad. Nuts and seeds, some fruit, load of starch, and no sugar. And of course, no sugar means no Coke. So of course, you know how hard that one was for me. So yeah, this flyer, John, that you gave to me was fantastic. So if you want to copy the flyer, we'll give you Kelbert's information, and you guys can contact him for it. But expound on any of that on the flyer and the exercise routine and what you built for me.
The eat meat and vegetables, that's exactly what we try to incorporate more into your diet. Meat, good meat, clean meat, preferably organic meat, and vegetables. Vegetables isn't a lot of people's favorite, but it is the best way to get a lot of the nutrients. Sometimes people do have to take vitamins and things like that and supplements, and that is great, and that's fine. I work with a supplement company. I take First Form supplements and love them. But that eat meat and vegetables needs to be, if you picture a plate, and I think we talked about this, if you picture a plate, the bulk of what's on the plate should be the meat and vegetables.
Yeah, and so you said, well, look, make that your lunch, right?
Yes.
Just a real simple salad and put meat on it. And I'm like,
Yes.
Are you serious? And that lunch for me is crucial now. It's like, yes. I won't skip that. As a matter of fact, I won't skip my breakfast. I'll have my bowl of oatmeal. I have my water. You told me, my one cup of coffee after that. By that time, I've already done my walking, and then I have the energy to tackle work. And then I take time to have my lunch. That was a big game changer for me. That was 25, 30 years of skipping lunch. So the whole idea of me stopping and paying attention to that was difficult. For any of you listening, you can say this is hard. That to me was one of the hardest things to do. But it's 15, 20 minutes that really changed a lot.
And so you're fueling your body for the rest of your day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, How did you feel after taking that lunch, after beginning to incorporate lunch? Did you feel a crash?
No. The first week was hard. The first week was very hard because I was missing my Coke. See, it was around that time at noon where I would start drinking Coke or high fructose, anything that was Coke driven, carbonated, because I could start feeling by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So that first week and a half was extremely difficult. A lot of big headaches. And I said, okay, I'm going to work through this. I'm going to stick to it. By the time a week and a half came, it started, I don't know what kicked in. It just started feeling really good. And it's like,
your body cleaned up.
I know it was clean. You called it cleaning up. And I was like, okay, let's call it whatever we need to call it. It's great. Okay. By the time we got into the second, third week, I was like, this is beginning to work. And then the shocking factor was that once I hit 3 to 4 weeks, folks were noticing, and they were telling me that my facial fat was hey, you're losing weight. And I'm like, no, I'm actually not. I mean, my scale says the same, but I started noticing just little things that it's like, this is really encouraging. It's like I'm seeing, and it had to be with the fact that I was reducing the sugar intake that I was so dependent on. So yes, John, I started noticing in the afternoons the change from lack of energy to energy. Yeah. I didn't realize you could actually get energy like that.
Yeah, that's where we're supposed to get energy from, not from man-made things, but from whole foods and protein, carbohydrates, and on a level to energize your body. If you know you're going to burn that, like I eat more carbs than you, because I do a little bit more things on that list than you. But not everyone has to do all of those things to live a healthy and fulfilled life. Right. I mean, just even backtracking a little bit, you talked about when you're in the hospital, your doctor asked you about living your life for your son and your children. You know, that kind of goes back to the why of why you're doing all of this, the why you're doing it, the who you're doing it for. You have to ask yourself those questions, and you have to be able to answer those questions and be brutally honest with yourself. Sometimes people are brutally honest, but it's their actions that show their honesty, and their actions say, I'm doing this for me, or I'm not doing it for me. You know, I'm doing it because I love food and I don't care what people say, you know, so your actions are going to speak louder than your words. Although,
and I told you, John, I mean, yeah, I have a lot of ambitions for life, but I think, just to be really frank with you, I just want to be around. You know, I know how important it has been for me to have my folks around. And so losing them, it's like impacting as it is for everybody. And I wanted to not exit my kid's life early because I didn't want to eat right. So I was my concern that, yeah, John, I want to be around. And so that's why the doctor, when he asked me that question, do you not want to see Nicholas graduate? I was like, that's only 7 years from now. And he's like, yeah, Maurice, I don't think you're going to make 7 years. Okay. And when I hit pre-diabetic, the doctor told me, Maurice, do you know what happens when you become diabetic? Okay. You don't want to get disciplined now. You're about to become very disciplined. So get ahead of it while you can do something about it, as opposed to never being able to get off of being diabetic, you know. And it's like, okay, this is serious. I've waited too long. So yeah, my why was just simply, I want to be around. I want to be there for my loved ones, and I want to be there for them.
And to piggyback on that, one of the most meaningful moments of my life in this space, this nutrition fitness space, is when I was at your daughter's wedding. She came and gave me a hug, thanked me for being there, and she said, "Thank you for keeping my dad alive." And I was like, okay, I guess that's what happened, huh? That's really great. Yeah. We were able to keep him here so he could walk his daughter down the aisle.
She and I have a picture, and I'm going to get emotional here. So I got a picture here that you know, she regularly tells me, she says, "Dad, and you look so healthy." The immediate impact is that I do remember, I forgot to tell you that, you know, my immediate goal, John, is in 2 months, I have a wedding, and I don't want to be overweight. Just like my daughter's trying to fit it into her dress. And you helped my wife find a suit for me that was, I think, 2 sizes below. And I was like, oh, you rascal, I know what you're doing. And so I had to fit into my suit, you know. And so we made a game out of it, and we did. It was great. So yeah, I had a short-term goal, but then of course a long-term goal. And those were my whys.
Yep. So we incorporated breakfast, we incorporated lunch, which is already 2 meals that you were missing.
Right.
And then we incorporated a healthy dinner. And even
before we get to dinner, do you remember the conversation we had about, okay, what about snacks? Okay, because I know that around 3 or 4 o'clock, I'm so used to eating something, you know. And you said, well, let me give you some options here for snacks. Let's go into that.
Yeah, so that on that flyer, that's the nuts and seeds part. It doesn't sound sexy, doesn't sound beautiful, but it's a good snack. It's so the nuts.
You know how many cans of pistachios I've eaten? I mean, I just, you know, and cashews, and I mean, I didn't realize. Okay, you mix that with a little bit of raisins. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, there's your snack. And I was like, well, you know what I was snacking with before wasn't helping. So yeah, that whole area of nuts and seeds has become my snacks, and I know where they are in the kitchen. I have some here in the office, and so I make myself available to them throughout the day.
I mean, there's a reason why they were called trail mix. You know, that is the perfect snack while you're on a trail trying to get to the next spot, or trying to get to your next destination, or trying to get to your dinner. It is a perfect little snack to fuel the body, has a little protein. Sometimes it has a little salt. So actually it's a little electrolytes for you to get to the next moment. And then if you incorporate some of the dry fruit into it, it has a little natural sugar, not man-made sugar, but natural sugar involved. So that is always a better option. Anytime you can stay natural, anytime you can stay whole with your foods, that's going to help. That's going to be better than anything that you can get. I always tell people, when you go to the grocery store, shop on the outer.
Shop on the outside. I remember that. Yeah, right.
Not the inner. The inner part of the grocery stores has all your processed foods. The outside of the grocery store has all of your foods that came from the earth. The foods that our body can process and was created to process and loves to process. And the bad sugars, your liver will store that. And sometimes that bad fat will become a part of your liver. And that's the only part that can process that high fructose corn syrup. And you just, that's hard on your body. And it's what ends up taking people out. So snacks, we dealt with that.
So snacks was great.
Yeah. And then tried our best to eliminate sugar. Tried our best to eliminate certain carbonated beverages. You can have a little carbonated beverages. You like flat water. You don't like, you like sparkling water?
No. Ended up being, remember, after about the first month, we just couldn't figure out how to replace, and we hit a nerve, and it was tap water. It was room temperature tap water. So
And
instead of putting my bottles of water, or we even tried putting lemon and different
lemon juice,
tasting. It just, for me, it ended up being, I was at a restaurant, they didn't have ice, the ice machine, they gave it to me and I drank it. I went, wait a minute, I love this. I can see I grew up with room temperature water. So that eventually has become my go-to, which has helped me a lot in my 7-8 glasses of water. So yeah, we finally figured out that for me, what worked was room temperature water.
And that's what people have to do. You do have to figure out what works for you. There's no specific formula. There's a general formula, kind of a formula that which is, to me, what Greg Glassman came up with, which is brilliant: eat meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds. But even with the water, just figure out what works for you. I always say start with a glass of water at the beginning of the day to just kind of jump your system. You've been asleep, hopefully, for 7 to 8 hours. If you're not getting that amount of sleep, or some people know I need a certain amount to fuel my day. You need to fight to get that sleep. And we talked about that. We adjusted that in your diet also, or in your lifestyle also, right? Yeah,
because stopping to eat at 8 o'clock became now a new goal that took several weeks. And then to get to bed early, at a better time, and then wake up earlier. And then that's when I have room in my schedule to do my 45-minute walk. Now that we have a dog and he's got a lot of energy, there's a good reason to jump out the door because he has to get walked. And that has been very helpful because it helped me set my walking goals, my standing goals, my movement goals. And I just make sure my little 3 circles are closing in every day. So yeah, building the sleep routine along with food had kind of just all of a sudden things began to even work better and faster. The immediate result for me was just a good, steady dropping of weight that I've been able to retain. This is the first time ever that I've been able to lose weight consistently, lose a lot of weight, and keep it low. And then eventually my wardrobe had to change, but thankfully it's moving in the right direction. So yeah, it works. Like I talked about earlier, the domino effect is there, and you set it up, and then things begin to change. Yeah.
And you've since had more blood work done, and that has changed too.
So yes, back to the doctor, because he and I are visiting every 3 months. And yeah, the second set of numbers where he was incredibly happy. And he said, whatever you're doing, keep it going. I'm due to go next month for my second phase, because this will be my 6 months since you and I started working with me. And then we'll eventually look to how much I can do without my sleeping machine. What do you call it? The
sleep apnea,
the CPAP,
The CPAP, yeah.
And so he's monitoring that as well, but he's very happy with the numbers. I'm very happy with the numbers, and I'm looking forward to, end of April when I can go back and see where I'm at. Let's talk about the dinner aspect.
So Maurice has a hero and wife. She's pretty amazing. She's a good lady. And so sometimes her meals and Maurice's meals aren't the same. Sometimes they are the same meals, but we had to, at least for the beginning of this journey, really make sure that he was eating his meat and his vegetables, and not a lot of side things, not a lot of butter. Kind of dairy is one of the things that you kind of have to cut out your diet little bit by little.
Right.
You can give yourself maybe some kind of cheat days, a few cheat days, or one cheat day a week or something like that, where you incorporate a little bit of a sweet or a little cheat meal or something like that. But we cut out dairy, we cut out a lot of starch, and just really kept the dinner pretty simple. But at the same time, he could eat kind of whatever he wanted to with that dinner, and knowing that there are certain parameters, and not feel like he was missing out and looking at everybody else's plate on the table and thinking, that would be much better.
I just had to watch out, stop loading my plate with potatoes.
Yes.
just lessen potatoes and increasing other areas. And again, it works.
And one of the biggest things I always tell people is eat until you're satisfied, not eat until you're full. You don't necessarily need to eat until you're full, but just eat until you feel like, okay, the hunger is gone. I'm satisfied. I can step away from the table now.
Yeah.
That alone will cause such a change in your life, and a change in your relationship with food. Because again, food is fuel. There are few people that enjoy food as much as I do. I enjoy food. And if I ate to fuel my enjoyment, I would be out of money because I would be eating out all the time. I would be eating sugar all the time because I actually do have a sweet tooth, but I can't eat for enjoyment all the time. There are moments that you do savor in your life where you do eat for enjoyment, but most of the time you need to realize this is a machine that I'm fueling.
John, for those people that said, all right, can John help me? You're available for clients, right? And you'd be able to, first, you normally recommend them, get your blood work, talk to your doctor, tell me what the results are, tell me what you're needing, and I'll put together a game plan for you. The key thing is that it's tailored for everybody based on what they need, those markers they need to get to, those aspirations, right? How do folks contact you?
Well, just shoot me an email. I mean, it's pretty simple right now. Just shoot me an email at kelbertmcfarland@gmail.com. And we want to start a relationship. So the same way I want to get a proper relationship with food is I want to get a proper relationship with you and just figure out what life looks like. To hear a little bit about your why and your who, who you're doing it for, why you're doing this. Definitely get you moving. More often than not, most people just aren't moving enough. And the body starts kind of shutting down, realizing there's no need for me to perform. This doesn't need to work. This doesn't need to work because they're not putting any kind of a demand on me. So it's an improper demand that you're putting on your body.
Yeah, what helped me was getting out in the morning to do my 30-minute walk.
Yep.
And my watch tells me, hey, every hour you got to get up at least for 2 to 3 minutes. And so it kind of prods me, and that helps me move around, So I'm constantly looking at my numbers, and that helps kind of bring it all together.
The other thing that Maurice and I have, which is what I would have with anyone, is accountability. He says that watch because he's track his blood pressure, his weight, his water intake, his quiet time, which is important, his quiet/prayer/meditation time. All of these things he would track and he would send me. And during those first couple of months, he sent them every day. And when we realized things became a part of his lifestyle, we backed off. He didn't need to send it every day, but he's still accountable to me. And I'm accountable to him in a lot of things.
Things that you and I decided we were going to track was the blood pressure. Am I sleeping well? Am I walking? What's my weight look like? Am I drinking my 8 glasses of waters? How are you eating? Your cups of coffee and your soft drinks? What's your stress levels like? Are you taking your medicine? And are you having some quiet time throughout your day? Those, I pretty much put a yellow, red, green on how I did. And I would send them to you on a daily basis. That level of accountability, I think, although everything we've talked about is critically important, it falls apart if you don't have someone that you respect, that can help you, and that can help you stay accountable. To me, you've been very encouraging. I hate when you have to kind of follow up on me because all of a sudden I disappear on you. Yeah, because my last week was terrible, so I don't want to tell you about it. And so you always prod me. How you doing? How you doing? So having a coach through this has been tremendously helpful. And so this is one of the reasons why I asked you, John, come on a podcast and let's talk to you about how you're helping me, because I'm coming across now that folks are asking, man, Maurice, how did you lose weight? And I tell them this, I tell them that, and go, man, I need to know more about it. So I keep telling them, you know what, we just need to do a podcast. Having the accountability and a partner that can help you stay focused is tremendously important.
Yeah. And one quick thing I want to say is I know what kind of week Maurice had last week. I know his son was in town, and that is perfectly okay for him to have a week like that because he's changed his lifestyle. He's changed his mentality. He's changed his approach to food. And I know that he's not going to fall off the wagon. I know that he's going to get right back up. I'm going to help him get right back up. And I know that it's okay to have moments where you just celebrate life, celebrate your family, get a couple of cheat meals in a row.
Yeah.
And still,
and the stress of that. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, even with those cheat meals, you still probably are thinking in the back of your mind, I need to stop. I need to slow down, because your lifestyle has completely changed and your relationship with food has changed.
Yeah. And what that has done to my mental health has been fantastic, because the stress of all that just not there anymore. Yeah. It's like, I know how to handle it. It's practical. It's very easy to practice. It's very easy to fail and get back up. It's got markers that I can shoot forward like a game. I can make it exciting. I can mess up. I can celebrate around it. I can see the results. And so that has brought such a sense of calm, because I can do something about it. And that has lowered my stress levels incredibly, and I'm actually healthier. So yeah, the impact has been great. John, I can't thank you enough for it. I'm looking forward to the next 6 months of it, I know that I'm still not finished and, moving in the right direction. So I want to encourage all of you guys, please contact Kelbert. I call him John. It's like it's nickname for me. Give us your email and your phone number one more time.
So my email address is Kelbert McFarland. My name is spelled Kelbert McFarland @gmail.com. Phone number is area code 918, Tulsa, Oklahoma, phone number. Area code 918-814-2460. I'm actually a photographer. You can go to my photography website and get some information there. It's kelbert.co, KELBERT.co. See some images, but go to the contact page and just say, hey, I actually need nutrition help. The nutrition side and all of that is coming up soon. So
and your whole umbrella is Finetuned Living. This is where you pretty much, that's your brand. I think you even have a website, finetunedliving.com. Look them up there as well. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. And for everybody, thank you guys for joining me here. This has been a really great podcast. I appreciate it. I hope it's helped. With me, you can contact me at mauricetraining.com or at my video library at winningintheworkplace.com. Next week, we'll be having our podcast once again here at the same time, 8:15, same Zoom link. And I thank you all for joining me. So we look forward to seeing you guys next week.